Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Jordan Christie.
And I'm Barry Graham.
We highlight the week's news and stories happening all over Hampton Roads. We have fresh stories for you as we hop into April. Virginia lawmakers are pushing to protect reproductive rights in the state constitution, but access to care could still remain a complicated issue.
If you don't have health insurance, if you don't have access to free health care, it's all a moot point.
Federal funding for medical research in Virginia continues to be a big economic driver for the state. That's despite a drop in the total number of projects funded.
And WHRO's John Doucette speaks with actor and comedian Nick Offerman ahead of his comedy and craftsman show in Virginia Beach later this month. It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. The war with Iran entered its fifth week, and with it, more sailors from Norfolk are headed to the Middle East. WHRO's Steve Walsh says aircraft carrier USS Bush and its 4,000 sailors left Tuesday morning for a long but uncertain deployment.
The USS George H.W. Bush pulled out of Norfolk as the Trump administration continues to send mixed signals. Rear Admiral Alexis Walker was tight-lipped.
Well, for operational security and as well as for flexibility, who knows what the next crisis will be or the next challenge will be around the world, so we'll be ready to go wherever that is.
Media reports indicate USS Bush would replace USS Ford in the theater with Iran. The carrier has been sidelined by a fire. On Tuesday, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth hinted that the U.S. may be winding down operations against Iran. President Trump made similar suggestions on social media after saying Monday that the U.S. could also widen the war by targeting civilian infrastructure. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
Virginia is moving to protect reproductive rights in its constitution. WHRO's Yi-Ching Wang reports lawmakers say, despite the push, access to care may still be at risk.
Changes to the state budget, including funding cuts for the Virginia Contraceptive Access Initiative and uncertainty around federal Title X support, could affect how Virginians access care.
We'll have more reproductive health protections in Virginia than any other state in the South and be amongst the most protected in the whole country. But if you don't have health insurance, if you don't have access to free health care, it's all a moot point.
That's Democratic Delegate Rodney Willett from Henrico County. He says the gap will be especially noticeable for low-income patients who rely on subsidized services. Willett says the state is looking at ways to step in, but with growing costs tied to Medicaid and SNAP, fully replacing that funding may be unlikely. Yi-Ching Wang, WHRO News.
The vote on Virginia's proposed congressional map is Tuesday, April 21st. WHRO's John Doucette is reporting that the special election is complicating schedules for the final quarter of the school year in Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach counts learning time in days, not hours. Students have to attend a total of 180 days per year. Virtual learning on April 21st wouldn't count toward instructional time. The school board approved closing schools to students for the referendum election and adding 10 minutes to the end of days in the fourth quarter. There's been pushback, including a petition that aims to reverse the call. School board member Matt Cummings hopes the board considers using hours rather than days in the future, as some other divisions do.
I think an hours-based model does allow flexibility built within it in case, there's emergencies or things pop up like special elections, snow days.
Time is being added to school days from April 13th through June 8th. John Doucette, WHRO News.
Virginia legislators are still hammering out a budget, and the Commonwealth's free clinics are hoping that means their request for more funds could be fruitful. WVTF's Brad Kuttner says it's especially crucial as federal cuts are expected to eviscerate services.
You can't get blood from a turnip, right?
That's Ashley Green with the Western Tidewater Free Clinic in Suffolk. She's been in the business of serving some of Virginia's most needy for 12 years, and she said costs, from staff to medication and everything in between, had skyrocketed.
Anyone running a household to a business knows things just cost more.
That warning comes before changes in President Donald Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill kick in. It's expected to see hundreds of thousands of Virginians lose health care, driving more patients to free clinics like the ones Green runs, or to emergency rooms at a higher cost. Rufus Phillips is CEO of the Virginia Association of Free and Charitable Clinics, the group that advocates for free clinics at the legislature. He said their network usually gets about $8 million a year from the state, but they need more, $15 million more, to meet the coming demand. but current estimates now put the funding closer to $5 million. Budget negotiations are ongoing with a late April target for a final deal. Whether or not clinics get the funding they say they need remains to be seen. In Richmond, I'm Brad Kuttner.
Drug overdoses remain one of the leading causes of death in the U.S. For years, researchers have been exploring whether vaccines could prevent opioid addiction and overdose death. WVTF's Roxy Todd reports researchers at Virginia Tech have designed a new type of vaccine that blocks the dangerous effects of oxycodone and fentanyl.
This research is in the early stages, and the vaccine has only been tested on mice. But initial results show that using a special type of nanoparticle can be more effective than previously developed opioid vaccines at triggering the body's natural immune response. The vaccine teaches cells to recognize and fight off the dangerous effects of opioids. Yuanju Bian is one of the researchers who worked on the study. He says this vaccine wouldn't replace other medications.
I think our vaccine can be a complement to the existing treatment methods. It's a completely different approach. We target the molecules in the circulation before they enter the brain. I think it's a promising approach.
The vaccine would need to be studied further before it's ever tested on humans, and the federal government currently doesn't appear to have a strong appetite to fund new vaccine research. If more studies do show promise, the vaccine could someday be made available to people at risk of an overdose, like those with opioid use disorder, or teenagers who are more likely to try a drug for the first time, unaware that it may be laced with fentanyl. In Blacksburg, I'm Roxy Todd.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, Williamsburg is providing phones to people without housing so they can more easily stay connected for housing needs. But first, Dominion Energy spends $6 million a year helping those struggling with bills. It spends another $6 million annually on home efficiency upgrades for customers. WHRO's Toby Cox spoke with one of those customers.
Gail Peterson suddenly found herself with less income when her husband died. The Virginia Beach homeowner says she's been terrified of getting an energy bill she can't pay. She called Dominion's Energy Share program, and she says she's glad she did.
I've never, ever asked for help before, so it was a little hard for me. But you know what? When you need it, you need it.
The program helps people pay bills due to financial hardships and also covers energy efficiency upgrades like Peterson's. Dominion partnered with Atlantic Spray Systems to replace her attic insulation, HVAC system, and ductwork. Peterson said it's too soon to tell how much the upgrades will reduce her bill, but she said she's noticed her home feels more comfortable, and sometimes, thanks to the new insulation, she doesn't need her HVAC system on at all. Toby Cox, WHRO News.
James City County homeowners could see their property tax rates decrease in fiscal year 2027, but will likely still pay more than last year. WHRO's Nick McNamara explains why that's the case for residents.
County Administrator Scott Stevens' proposed budget drops property tax rates by 3 cents per $100 of a home's assessed value. With assessments up nearly 12%, however, the average homeowner will pay closer to 7% more, accounting for the cut. James City County is also looking at adding 2% to meals tax in the coming year. The operating budget is more than $280 million, a 6.8% increase. Stevens says that's partly driven by higher costs for gas, maintenance, and contracts. It's also covering increased employee health care costs and raises to retain staff. The budget includes an increase of more than $5 million for schools. That doesn't cover the extra money Williamsburg-James City County schools asked for things such as JROTC and lacrosse programs. Stevens is hopeful more state dollars can split the difference. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Williamsburg will pay more for schools, staff, and outside agencies under its proposed fiscal year 2027 budget. WHRO's Nick McNamara is back with a breakdown of those numbers.
Property tax rates will stay the same at 62 cents per $100 of assessed value, but residents will still likely pay more than last year. Property values went up 5.2% on average. Water bills are expected to bump about $3 per month also. Williamsburg's proposing a more than $121 million budget, a 17% increase from fiscal year 2026. It includes capital upgrades. It pays for 14 new hires, staff staff raises, higher contract and maintenance costs, and more funding for the Regional Jail and Transit Authority. The proposed budget also gives $1.8 million more for schools, which the city and county agreed to last October. Like the county, Williamsburg is also not giving extra money to the school division for things such as JROTC and lacrosse programs. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Chanterelles and black trumpets, morels and oysters, chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, and giant puffballs. If that piqued your interest, then you know mushrooms are abundant in Virginia. Fungus-focused legislative proposals are popping up in Richmond, as Dave Cantor from partner station WVTF reports.
About 24 members of the Blue Ridge Mycological Society follow a dirt path in rural Schuyler through trees and abundant plant life during early March. They're looking for an entry point to the kingdom of fungi. Gabrielle Sobreville is part of that group, and last year published Gathered on foraging, feasting, and the seasonal life, an exploration of wild edibles and their place in our changing appetites. Mushrooms are among that fare, though fungi can also be used to make fabric, furniture, building materials, and a film that can replace plastic. Sobreville isn't dubious about the industrial or health applications of mushrooms, but said medicinal claims need to be properly researched and vetted.
I think that fungal medicine does hold a lot of promise if we can get people to stop making sensationalized claims about things before we've gone through actual clinical trials.
A General Assembly bill this session proposed creating the Virginia Fungi Task Force. The panel of scientists, environmentalists, and state officials would have examined, quote, the economic potential of fungi in the Commonwealth. But after being approved by the House, it was later continued until next year, meaning it could be revived and passed at a later date. During a Senate committee hearing on the proposal in February, officials also heard how mushrooms can affect the health of the state's environment and watershed.
We can use mushrooms in both soil health and in their role in keeping our forests healthy to protect the Chesapeake Bay, so their relationship is very closely linked.
That's Jay Ford, Virginia Policy Manager for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, who spoke in favor of the task force bill.
And so this would be our first step towards getting our arms around what should be here, what we're losing through impacts of climate change, what those impacts are to our forests and soils.
Thousands of fungal species have been identified in Virginia, and it's possible that more exist that haven't been cataloged. Among those are mushrooms containing psilocybin, a hallucinogenic substance in more than 100 species that have been used for recreational and medicinal purposes. It's a Schedule I substance at the federal level. Legislative proposals approved by the House and Senate this year direct the state to reschedule psilocybin if and when it's reassessed by the U.S. FDA. Governor Abigail Spanberger has until April 13th to act on those bills. Ritas Vilgalis is a Duke University biology professor. He began researching mushrooms at the Mountain Lake Biological Station in Giles County when he was a Virginia Tech undergrad student. He said the area is one of the most pristine places he's done fieldwork.
The Blue Ridge area always has been sort of a famous hotspot for biodiversity, whether you're talking salamanders or plants or fungi. So there's a long history there, but when you layer on top of all that history, there's the last 20, 30 years, this realization that there's even more diversity that we haven't been able to really put our finger on yet.
That unstudied pool of fungi could be at risk because of climate change and development. Figuring out what those mushrooms do in the environment and what they might do in the lab is partially why the Blue Ridge Mycological Society exists.
What attracts me to mushrooms is the fact that they are sort of the hinge between life and death. They're the thing that makes life after death possible.
Sobreville, the educator and author, explained her interest in the fungal world while standing underneath a tree canopy in Schuyler. She described its underground machinations, sometimes called the wood wide web, and the reciprocal relationship mushrooms have with surrounding trees and plant life.
Because so many fungi are decomposers, they are what we rely on to decompose things, to decompose dead stuff, dead trees, to make soil, to create connections within forest systems. You don't have forests without fungi.
I'm Dave Cantor.
Federal funding for medical research continues to be a big economic driver for Virginia, even as fewer projects are being funded. WHRO's Yi-Ching Wang breaks down why that is the case.
A report from industry group United for Medical Research shows the number of grants awarded in 2025 fell to the lowest level in nearly 30 years. The National Institutes of Health shifted how funding is distributed. It gave the full amount for multi-year studies up front instead of spreading it out over years. This meant fewer grants awarded. Caitlin Litch from the organization says NIH funding still supported more than 6,800 jobs in Virginia last year.
So everywhere the NIH grants are received in Virginia and elsewhere all across the country, we see a strong job creation and new economic activity.
The report expresses concern about the long-term impacts of the funding shift. Yi-Ching Wang, WHRO News.
Williamsburg is giving city employees' old phones to people without housing to stay connected with outreach staff. WHRO's Nick McNamara reports on how that's impacted the city's approach with the issue.
The program launched in February. Human Services Director Wendy Evans says it's already proven helpful in scheduling appointments for services and letting people know there's someone looking out for them.
It's lonely out there, so for them to receive a text from our staff to checking on them is a lifeline.
The outdated phones were typically left in storage or recycled. Instead, they now get a new life, bridging a communication gap. T-Mobile provides service for at least 3 months while staff work to get them on their own phone plan through other service providers. Some offer free or low-cost service for people who qualify for federal benefits, Medicaid, or other public assistance. Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
People visited Red Wing Park in Virginia Beach for this year's Cherry Blossom Festival weekend. WHRO's John Doucette takes us there.
The festival celebrates cherry blossom season and the relationship between Virginia Beach and its sister city, Miyazaki, Japan. People walked through the park's Japanese garden, listened to music, including taiko drummers, and walked under blossoming trees. Marcus and Arissa Clinton brought their sons, Makoto and Milo. Arissa Clinton says it's a taste of culture for their family.
We just here see the cherry blossom, and I want my kids, they're half Japanese, so I want them experience a little bit of Japanese culture because they're going to perform, some taiko.
Makoto, who is 8, says he had a favorite part of the celebration.
I like the music.
Additional activities continue this week at the park and Virginia Beach libraries. John Doucette, WHRO News.
The Virginia Living Museum in Newport News this week conducted its last salamander survey of the season. WHRO's Catherine Hafner details what researchers hope to gain from their observations.
The project started a few years ago to learn more about where and how salamanders are living on museum grounds. Ectotherm's curator Courtney Jaworski says they also wanted to teach people about the creatures, which she thinks are a little misunderstood.
They kind of get a bad rap of being scary or slimy, but they're really super important for the ecosystem.
Eastern redback salamanders spend their lives on the forest floor, hiding in leaf litter right under our feet. The museum put out a series of ceramic tiles that serve as habitat by trapping moisture underground. For the survey, volunteers turn over each tile, documenting what they see. Today, the group didn't find any salamanders, but some small toads and snakes did make an appearance. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Actor and comedian Nick Offerman is known for his deadpan comedic style, as well as his love for woodworking and craftsmanship.
He's combining all of those passions in a comedy tour that's stopping by the Sandler Center in Virginia Beach on April 10th.
WHRO's John Doucette spoke with him about what folks can expect out of the show.
What I wanted to start with is to talk a little bit about the overlap of the book and the show. So the book is Little Woodchucks and the show is Big Woodchuck.
It's kind of a beautiful evening of a woodworking book packaged in a smartasses comedy box. Lee Buchanan ran my wood shop for 10 years and is just a hero in my life. We come from families that are self-sustaining and we love making things together. And so that's where this book came from, is us passing on the gospel of the love of making things together with other people. So it has this sort of wholesome family side to the show where you've got real woodworking and the good-hearted nature of our crafting book. But then I take that broccoli and I shove it into a delicious pizza that is my irreverent comedy stylings. And so I do some songs, and I'm kind of a mischievous brat doing a comedy show while Lee is kind of trying to get this wholesome family material across.
And a lot of what you've put forward, I think, in the book and the show, from what I understand, is communal. It's about families making things together. It's about things that can be used for fun or practical things. That kind of communal aspect of your work, I mean, it seems reflected in the wood shop that you have, but also in what you're talking about here.
Absolutely. I mean, I learned in hindsight, I grew up in this wonderful big family, and there are about 40 of us, and my wife, Megan, and I are the only two that don't live within like an 8-mile radius in this Tri-County area. And so I grew up in this family where we lean on each other and we make things together. And whatever it is, everybody shows up and helps each other out. And my proclivity was then to become a theater actor. And I had a little theater company in Chicago with a bunch of friends. And in hindsight, my theater company and then my wood shop in Los Angeles, they're all groups of people working together to make something that lends succor to others. It provides nutrition or to the soul, or it provides respite to the bottom. In the case of building a chair, it provides a place for you to set your beer if you're building furniture, something that people hunger for and that will make their lives happier.
You've talked in other interviews about doing things together and doing things with kids, and I wondered how you would have someone go about, whether or not they have any woodworking experience, trying something with a young person. So you're doing something together.
I'm very proud of how we've addressed that very question in our book. There are a couple of projects, namely carving an animal out of a stick, the box kite, and the toast tongs, that are all elementary school level crafting. They're really fun and creative, but they're very lo-fi woodworking. I mean, you need like glue and a clamp, or some sticks and some paper. And one of the great lessons in the book is you're always going to screw things up when you're doing woodworking. You go in knowing that you're going to make mistakes, and it's a wonderful life lesson, because I like to live in a way that I'm going to make mistakes, because I keep wanting to challenge myself. I don't want to just do things that I know I'm going to get right, because then I'll get bored and I'll drink too much beer. Instead, I want to make life choices where I'm scared of this acting job, or I have anxiety about building a canoe or a guitar. Is it going to float? Will it play music? I don't know. Will it suck? There's only one way to find out. I get so excited about this subject because I love turning kids onto the idea of everything we have is made by people somewhere. And I want us to know who is making it and how and why and where.
Well, Nick, thank you for the time. It was wonderful having you here. Thanks.
Thanks.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Toby Cox, John Doucette, Catherine Hafner, Nick McNamara, Steve Walsh, and I-Ching Wang.
WMRA's Roxy Todd and WVTF's Brad Kuttner and Dave Cantor. Also, Connor Worley, who produced today's show.
A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed.
You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Barry Graham.
And I'm Jordan Christie. Have a great weekend.